Oh, interesting.
So now Kerri can't get on. That's interesting.
Mine is like loading. There's like a status.
Yeah. I also can't type in the chat while.
Okay, so
there we go.
Everyone's on now. Kerri, you might be signed in as a attendee, not a speaker. I think Nico ran into that, right?
Mm-hmm. And you just go on the left, at least on mine, I just went to the left-hand side of my screen all the way down, and it's speaker schedule. And then that's how you log in, is through your speaker schedule and not through the participant. But you do have to log out and then log back in.
So hopefully she heard that, and we'll give her a minute or two.
Great.
Can everyone hear us? You can type in the chat box just to confirm. And I want to apologize in advance. My dog has been snoring, and I hope it's people can't hear it because it's very loud to me.
Very soothing.
Okay, everyone's saying they can hear us. Great.
Yeah, it looks like folks can hear.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone.
And for those of you who are in the part 1 session, you're already aware of this. You can only chat your questions and comments, which must be super frustrating. So we apologize for that, and just know that the chats are being recorded. And so if you put a question or a comment in there, we will document it and make sure that we get to it. But if we miss them, because sometimes they come in really, really fast, you can bring it to our attention. But do know that if anything does get skipped, we will follow up and document all of those questions.
Okay, I'm going to turn my mic on because everyone can hear my dog snoring. Sorry about that. Oh, show the dog? Sure. Hold on. Sorry. He's a big boy.
Oh, yeah, big boy. Oh, he's famous. TV, buddy.
Oh no, Kerri, she said she can't seem to get in. So
was Kerri in the earlier session as a speaker?
Yeah, she was.
Oh, okay.
So let's see. See if I can.
I cannot get in as a speaker. Bummer.
Kerri, did you? Okay. Kerri, did you want to? Did you want us to just move forward and share? I know you sent an agenda, and then you can help facilitate through the chat box. It's not ideal, but here Jeanette is writing. You might try leaving the session and using my speaking schedule in the left-hand side. Yeah, if you scroll all the way down on the left-hand side, you'll see it, the speaker schedule, and that's where you enter. Because unfortunately, this happened with Janet this morning with the deputy administrator when she was trying to speak. She signed on as an attendee. Let me pull up the agenda and share that in the meantime. Let's share screen. Okay, so hopefully everyone can see the screen, but I know Kerri wanted to talk about Gaap guidance updates. Getting any questions, input, discussion on that, and seeing where we are in the general timeline. Talk about Gaap training, EPA site visits, talk about PPGs, any questions on that, and anything else people want to talk about generally on Gaap. Okay, so Kerri's going to try logging off and logging back on, so hopefully that will work. I did want to share, this is the work group participants for the Gaap revision work groups. There's, I think, 5 different work groups, is that right? Gaap structure, test drive, PPG, technical assistance, and the Gaap hub. And gosh, it would be nice if we could have someone speak on, who are on these different work groups, speak on any progress. I'm personally not in any of these work groups. Nico, are you?
I was on the solid waste work group, which doesn't seem to be included in that list, so there may be even more.
Oh.
But not sure, you know, what I can share aside from, you know, we were having some very good conversations, and it seemed like the general consensus of the group project officers from across the country were to, you know, expand flexibilities and to, you know, bring a lot of the decision making that had been sort of delegated at headquarters back to the regions. And so I think that sums up most of our conversations. But again, until we receive the guidance, we won't know whether, you know, our conversations or comments were incorporated.
Okay. I wanted to let you know that Kerri asked that we could skip the guidance part and move on to issues. Stephanie Smith also said she could type up a little update on structure. She sits in on the work group. Yeah, if anyone has any updates they want to type up, we'll happily read them. In terms, and then Mary said, I'm very interested in Gaap training. In terms of Gaap training, if you're a new environmental director, we do have a recording of our Gaap 101 session that we gave last year, and there's also going to be a Gaap 101 session this year. But let me put that recorded session in the chat box. I always share that with new environmental directors to kind of give an overview of what is and isn't Gaap eligible. Other than that, we're going to put out what's called our Gaap notification document, and it's all about how to apply for Gaap fiscal year 23 funding. And we're going to have a webinar for that notification, to talk about that notification document and what's in it and how to apply for funding. And that webinar will take place November 30th. And so all our other tribal environmental directors should receive an invite for that webinar. Do we have a time yet? Do you know, Nico?
For that webinar?
Yes.
I think it's towards the end of November, but I'm not.
Oh, it's November 30th. I was just wondering if you knew what time it was.
Oh, I don't, yeah.
Okay. So those are 2 different types of trainings you could go. And then I know that I believe with Rob Roy that Ruben has been in contact with him about doing another Gaap 101 training with new environmental directors, but that hasn't been scheduled yet.
There are a couple of people in the chat that mentioned being on work groups. One, I think you saw Stephanie's on being in the Gaap structure work group, but also Tabitha Langston from the test drive work group. Did you want them to type up updates?
That'd be great, yeah. people have any updates or thoughts, or I'm not even sure how many times we've met so far, some of these work groups, so that'd be great.
Just to chime in on the notification webinar you were wondering about, I think the tentative time is from 10 till 12
Oh, thank you.
on November 30th, as you said,
10 to 12 Pacific time, right?
as far as I know.
Yeah, so pencil that in. It's always, even if you've done it every year, it's always good to have a little refresher on applying, and be there. You know, we'll be there to answer any questions.
And Kerri's left 2 comments. One was that there were some questions about climate change in Gaap. And so feel free to put those questions into the chat, and we'll address them as they come in. And then she also announced that the waiver for the PPG match was recently approved. So that is great news. And if anybody has any questions on that, include those in the chat as well. We'll address them.
Yeah, another good Gaap program update is that the class waiver to do an extension of your 4-year grant into a 5th year was also approved. So if you think that you will, if your 4-year grant is going to end this year, fiscal year 22, then you might want to consider, if you think there'll be a lot of leftover funds, extending it into a 5th year. It's something you could talk about with your project officer.
What were some of the other issues, Julianne, that were on the agenda? If you want to go through them while people...
Oh, sure, yeah. Here we go. You want to address maybe EPA site visits?
Oh, if I had updates, I would give them.
Yeah. Yeah, currently we're not even in the office yet, and we're not approved to do travel yet. I hope that changes soon, but we have not been given any updates on that, on when that will change. That information will be really important, not only to know about site visits, but when we can have our next in-person art talk. I definitely miss visiting with the tribe and learning about, seeing the site. It's really helpful for me as a project officer to understand the activities you guys do.
Who's the best part of the job?
Yeah, I agree.
There's a request here to go over the waiver for match procedure. Julianne, can you speak to that? Or Terry, if you're aware of that, if there's a procedure at all, maybe include that in the chat. I just know the waiver was approved, and so matches are no longer needed for PPGs. That's accurate.
That's all I know about it as well, unfortunately. Is Tim Wilhite on? So he's the PPG work group lead, so he might have also some added information.
And then Destiny said there isn't a procedure for it. It is just done. And so I just think in your application, you no longer have to include a match. And so should be pretty straightforward. But if there is any additional information, we'll try and get that to you here shortly.
There's an interesting comment from Tabitha following up on the Gaap work groups, that all of the work groups were given a deadline of November 1st to submit recommendations to AIEO, and that most, if not all, of the work groups are feeling pressured to come up with something by then. because that's a pretty short timeline.
That is quick. Okay, I'm finally putting the Gaap 101 training. Let's see if it works in the chat box. Okay, that took me way too long to find.
I missed.
Do you know when this was approved, the PPG match waiver? Tim, do you know when that was recently approved? Do you know when that officially came to be? I might also be able to find it in my inbox.
Tim or Destiny might have that handy, but I know I just recently found out. Okay, yep, September 30th of this year, so just 2 weeks back. Oh, sorry to hear that, Stephanie.
Oh no, a character limit.
No, that's already restrictive enough, not being able to just talk, and now there's a character limit.
Well, we can't go on site visits. We can't meet in person. Now we can't even hear people.
And we can't even talk.
Well, I will, this is not the most efficient way to do it, but I will also put my email address. If you want to email me anything, I can monitor it and read it.
Great.
Good idea.
I could also put in the chat box there. We just had a training on, or not a webinar, I would say, on climate change activities that can be funded with Gaap dollars. So that might be a useful resource. Let's see if I can find that as well. As you're working on your Gaap work plans for fiscal year 23 and you want to include more climate change activities, then it can give you some ideas.
And again, I included this in the part 1, but I just added the solid waste document that talks about all Gaap eligible activities, be them capacity building or implementation, as yet another resource in the meantime.
Yeah, and Destiny, I did note that you put it in the chat box this morning too. Thank you. So did anyone read Stephanie's update on Gaap structure updates? Okay,
No,
she said we have several deliverables in the works for recommendations to AIEO that we're wrapping up by October 26th to have them finalized for the November 1st deadline. And Kerri also said she can type a quick rundown of the Gaap guidance updates. So just to follow up on Stephanie's Gaap structure updates. So for deliverables, she's making a document with graphic design recommendations and a list of all the broken links in the online version of this guidance. That's a lot of work, so thank you. And then from Tabitha. Oh, sure, go ahead.
Okay. It says Tabitha commented, EPA lead of the work group provided draft language for the test drives section of the guidance with instructions to take a look at the draft language ahead of our Thursday meeting. He's hoping that by the end of the, it scrolled up. By the end of Thursday's meeting, we're in agreement on how to articulate the test drive section of the Gaap guidance, and we can move on to discussing the implications of PPG with that team next week. That sounds fantastic. Thank you, Tabitha.
It is good. It's important that we have clarity of what we mean by test drives.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like another deliverable from Stephanie. Victoria Flowers is making a definition of environmental self-determination to add to the guidance. That is also helpful.
That's great.
And then Tabitha notes this is all happening way too quickly. I know they're in a very tight timeline for the Gaap guidance, and so I imagine that it's a lot on top of just your day-to-day work. Any other updates on the guidance revision work groups? No, let me check my email too and make sure no one sent me anything.
Kerri commented, Gaap guidance revision work group started in late July, early August. There are 5 work groups: structure, test drives, PPGs, technical assistance, Gaap hub. Region 9 representatives are for the structure work group, Stephanie, Rambo test drives, Rob Roy, PPG. Mayo has been attending as much as possible. Technical assistance, Kelly Jundrasak from ITCA. Gaap Hub is Kerri and Lisa Gover. And the first draft is scheduled for early November.
Stephanie added a third deliverable or a third point. Steph and Jason Walker are working on plain language and an outcome output example, outcome output graphic. And she notes that it's confusing because it'd be easier to explain via her voice, which is understandable. But that's good. It's important that we have good plain language. And then Tabitha, just to follow up on her comment, says she'd rather have a good document that takes a little longer to put together than one that's thrown together to meet an arbitrary deadline.
Amen.
Tim added the PPG match waiver exception. Link to that. Thank you. So yeah, please, Kerri notes, please reach out to any of the Region 9 reps if you have input. The Gaap Hub is addressing ETEPs, capacity indicators, and progress reporting. And so please reach out to Kerri or Lisa if you have suggestions. I will go back to the agenda. Kerri added, this is all happening very fast and it's looking like the October deadline for a draft is a little too ambitious. Any other Gaap revision work group updates or comments? Or questions?
Great. Thanks, Stephanie, for providing your email. If anybody has any suggestions for the Gaap structure specifically, you can email her with that email address. It's great.
And then just in general, if people have any other questions or comments about the Gaap program.
Yeah, we can open it up entirely.
Just a friendly reminder that for people who do have a Gaap grant, that your final quarterly report is due by the end of the month for fiscal year 21.
Yeah.
Okay, Kerri noted that she was hoping to use this session to give guidance revision updates, but then with the hurdles, she's going to have a Gaap work group meeting very soon. Thank you. That'd be great.
Mm-hmm. And I guess I'll just repeat, take the time, take the opportunity to repeat, I guess, what, Ruben Mojica-Hernandez, the acting manager of the tribal section, said in the last, or the first part of this, which is that, project officers will be reaching out to all of their grantees here shortly. I think, starting within a week, but over the next, 2 months. To schedule coordination calls. And so we're really, encouraging grantees to participate in those calls, to have a draft work plan and budget, or at least an outline ready to discuss at those calls, having your ETEP handy, and really a list of questions. So, any questions that you have right now, include them in the chat, but just know that we'll all be reaching out shortly. And, I wouldn't worry about, confining your questions to the Gaap universe as well. We're project officers for Gaap grants, but we're also tribal liaisons. And so, questions, even if Gaap can't fund them, part of our job is to help you, address all of your environmental concerns. And so, I think that's a great place to have those conversations. If not Gaap, then where? And if you have, specific requests for technical assistance, make them known. And so, don't be shy during those calls. Try to get as much out of them as possible. Not only funding for your work plan, but information, for just kind of across the board, whether it be all of EPA or even other federal agencies. So, we're here to help, and please seize that opportunity.
Thanks, Nico. Yeah, we're happy to link you to resources or find the right contact to talk through an issue. We want to support as much as we can. Stephanie did ask for FFRs when the deadline is for that. And that deadline is the end of the calendar year. December 31st is when we'll need our FFR for fiscal year 21. So it is a little different from the final progress report. Thanks for bringing that up, just to clarify that.
And again, that's something to discuss with your project officer. Increasingly, I'm asking my grantees to either send it to me directly or to CC me whenever that gets sent, because oftentimes, the FFR gets sent to headquarters or, the finance center and we're kind of left out of the loop. And then we ask, hey, have you sent the FFR? And then they say that they have, but we never received it. So just making sure it's clear of where it was actually sent when, and even maybe including it, in the work plan. Send, as a deliverable, send FFR to Gaap project officer, just so that, it happens. Because it's a huge help for us to get those end of years completed and get that, past year behind us so we can start looking towards the future.
Yeah, and those FFRs are so helpful for us for doing the evaluation report, and which Nico and I will be talking about on Thursday. The plug for our session.
So please attend.
Thursday at 9 a.m. We'll talk about end of year
Mhm.
evaluations.
Exactly.
Well, maybe we'll give another. Oh, here we have another question come in. Aside from climate change and cultural activities in Gaap, do tribes have any other suggestions on what CIs?
Capacity indicators.
Oh, thank you. What capacity indicators are lacking in the Gaap guidance that we can consider during the revisions? It's a great question. Yeah, cultural activities would be great to address. Good point, Kerri. And then another comment that the capacity indicators often don't reflect tribal progress. So we want to make sure that it's a better reflection of what the work you guys are doing.
Thanks, Kerri. Yeah, but I wish we could hear an update on, even capacity indicators. I know that was being discussed in some of the work groups of whether or not to keep those or do away with them or to change some of the language. So I'm not sure where those conversations happened or where we stand on some of those.
Yeah. I was going to add, just as it stands right now in the Gaap guidance, if you have to have a capacity indicator in your work plans for the commitments you have, and if you don't see one that fits well, then you can always request. You can always create your own capacity indicator, just have to get approval through our office.
Some additional technical issues, not surprised.
You can wait a few more minutes, and if we can always, we can always end it early, I guess, or we can just wait here. Our hour is committed to this, so we're here to happy to wait here to see if anyone thinks of any other questions.
Mm-hmm. I'll say, don't be shy. Ask any questions you have. You can put us on the spot.
Yeah.
Here we go. Yeah, Kerri says one of the challenges is getting an accurate report to Congress, which reflects tribes' progress in Gaap. Definitely. And I'll make another plug for a work plan activity that kind of speaks to that, which is just, summarizing your accomplishments in your own words. We're often asked as project officers to report on tribal accomplishments, but I think they're always, more accurate and powerful when they come directly from the tribe. And so that's one of the things that you can actually include in your quarterly report are accomplishments that you've done under Gaap, and in your words. And so we can, represent those accomplishments more accurately if they are in your own words, and make sure that Congress receives them.
Stephanie made a comment here that she would love to be able to discuss rather than try to type right now. And she's wondering for tomorrow's session, is there a way to make everyone a speaker? I can definitely ask CJ and Shasta if there's any way to do that, or at least the people who have registered for that session, if we could just make them a speaker, that would be really great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't think this is a winning strategy here for breakout groups or work groups. So
yeah, it's good for just maybe like a plenary, like a presentation of some sort, but you want to have good group discussion. It's not conducive.
We'll see after this session what the options are for the rest of the day and tomorrow. That's great. Go Dodgers.
Yeah, it's definitely worth an ask, Stephanie. Thank you. I don't like looking at myself so much either. I'd like to see some of your faces.
Oh, it's okay, Kerri. We've all been in this situation. Dealing with yet another platform. Well, does anybody online have a question that they are planning to ask their Gaap project officer during their coaching calls that they want to ask now? You may be able to get some different perspectives. Tabitha comments, more information on AIEO's report to Congress on Gaap would be interesting. Definitely. Let me see whether we can get more information on that. And I'll follow up, Tabitha, on that comment.
Kerri responded that they requested the most recent report to Congress and still haven't seen it. Nina has a question directly.
Hi, Nina. Let me check my inbox. I wish I could hear it from your voice. I heard you speak yesterday. It was nice to see you. I did not receive that email, but I will go through my inbox and follow up or give you a call after this session.
There's a question here from Robertson. Can water sampling help water ponds? I would love to get a little more context or background on that, but in general, for Gaap funding, we can do baseline assessments, so we can do some sampling, and there's also we can do some test drives. But in general, taking water samplings year in, year out, it would be considered implementation. Nico, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I don't totally understand the question. So, Robertson, if you want to elaborate just a little bit, so we can make sure we're answering your question, that would be great.
Yeah, and I know a lot of the Clean Water Act funding goes to sampling.
Yes, Tabitha comments, we always hear about their need to report to Congress and how important it is, but I've never seen an actual report. Neither have I. And so I'm actually quite curious as to what gets collected and ultimately sent. So I'll follow up on that. And Robertson, why did you have to stop the water sampling? And then Tim, you may be the most well-positioned to answer some of these questions, but we'll do our best. Any additional questions? Everyone, I can't even, what's frustrating, I can't even see really who's attending.
Right. I'm not sure if the attendees are just people who have registered or people who are actually currently here.
Right. That's okay. Interesting. Funding. Okay. Okay, so first, Kerri responds in response to Tabitha's chain about reporting to Congress. Yes, and the reporting to Congress is why they are looking to change the ETEPs. So we are trying to recommend ways to improve reporting to Congress. Thank you, Kerri, for that. Tim Wilhite responds, Julianne was spot on about the fact that Gaap funds can be used to conduct baseline needs assessments, which can involve water sampling. And Robertson earlier said that funding was why they had to, lack of funding was why they ultimately had to stop. So I would reach out specifically to your project officer. It sounds like that was water funding. And so again, always feel free, even if you're receiving funding from a program area, to loop your Gaap project officer into those conversations. There are ways in which if certain programs are short on funding, or if it gets cut, that Gaap can help in some ways. And so, make sure you're having those conversations. The Gaap project officer is just aware of what's going on. Let's see. Adam Cantor says, we would like to begin sampling the Eel River for toxic algae blooms to better inform the tribe and public about the threat, which would be capacity building, as we've never collected these samples before. I assume this could be Gaap funded at this point, and if we succeed in establishing a protocol program, could eventually be CWA 106 funded, correct? Yes, that would be correct. And so that would be...
great summary of it, yeah. That's exactly the process we want to see, yeah.
Yes, exactly.
And yeah, if it's a partnership with the state too, we also can fund partnerships. The building of partnerships, it's all considered part of capacity building of your program.
Mm-hmm. And Nina, so there's no match required for PPGs now? That is correct. No match required.
Woohoo!
Mm-hmm. There's a couple other questions following up on Robertson's questions. Nina asked, what is the EPA definition of plain language? Is it a grade level? Don't know. But plain language is highly subjective. So interesting question.
There is, I think, at least for EPA employees, plain language guidance.
Okay.
So I'm trying to see if I can, if it's,
Find some of that too. Yeah.
yeah.
At least have that work group aware of that, and then we can.
Here we go. I found a link about plain language, plain writing on EPA website.
You're a rock star. Great. Nina says, cool, so I can get that money back. Interesting.
I think you're talking about the match for the PPG.
The match. I think it went into effect October 1st. And so it would be from that point on, my understanding. But we can get more information on that as well. So, and Nina, this is something I can follow up with you offline, or if you think it's to everybody's benefit, you can clarify that a little bit of whether it was from a previous award and application or a new PPG that you're applying for. Either way.
So Stephanie knows that plain language guidance is what they're actually using in the Gaap structure work group. And then, yeah, Tim says the match waiver went into effect October 1st. So this current fiscal year. Yeah.
Okay, these are all good questions. Okay, folks, we got a few minutes left. Ask any questions you may, or comments or jokes at this point. We're open.
There's some joking about the plain language guidance needs to be revised to have more plain language in it. That would not surprise me. I haven't actually reviewed it, but I imagine.
Yep.
Here's a question. What's the main difference from Gaap and PPG? So PPG is it's a grant that has funding from two different programs. So it could have funding from the Gaap program and then the water or air program or another program, versus there's Gaap standalone grants. And the idea behind PPGs is to reduce like the administrative burden by having only one grant for the different sources of funding. Hopefully that is helpful.
Mm-hmm. And a standalone Gaap grant is just a general assistance program cooperative agreement, and a PPG can have a Gaap grant in it. So Gaap can be in PPG, PPG can't be in Gaap. But PPG is just a way to sort of lump multiple EPA grants together, allowing more flexibility, between budgets and work plans, etc. And again, reach out to your Gaap project officer, for more information on that. To see, sometimes PPGs are in the grantee's, best interest, and sometimes they're not. So it's kind of a case by case. Oh my gosh, Stephanie, I know, that's horrible. This is really a bummer. But thank you everyone for your patience with this platform and us and all of the technical difficulties. Again, we'll reach out, to some of the organizers and figure out what can be done moving forward. can everyone? Everything froze. Why did this just freeze? Oh my gosh.
Can everyone still?
Just want to make sure.
You back on?
You're back.
I'm back. That was everything
Okay.
froze. Okay.
Robertson said, where can we get funding for landfills? And Stephanie responded, if you're in California, you can try Cal Recycle.
Mm-hmm. And IHS. And I would also reach out to your Gaap project officer to discuss, the specifics, the solid waste issues that you're having in general. And they can help, loop in experts from our solid waste team and connect you to, different agencies, just making sure that, you've gone about all the planning, and a lot of that Gaap can fund. So making sure that, you got access to all of the resources and technical assistance before, you even get to the landfill stage.
Christian asked, what's the best way to increase money that's awarded for Gaap and PPGs? I would say, so your budget should be informed by your work plan. So make sure that you can always try to increase your proposed budget by making sure you have a really robust work plan. And I do also want to say that we do receive requests for more funds than we have available. So that's just something to keep in mind if we end up not being able to fully fund a proposal. But it's definitely worth requesting the funds if you think they're needed. Nico, anything else on that point?
Which one? Sorry.
Oh, the best way to increase money that's awarded for Gaap and PPGs. Like, how can I think the question is how can you receive more funds?
And I've got a little kitty making noise too. So if people, we can start the session with animals and end the session with animals. Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness. That's a good distraction.
Yeah, I would say, in general, project officers do their best to fund all of the activities in a work plan. And so, we kind of take those work plans as the tribe's request, a list of their priorities for that year. And so we take those priorities seriously. So I would just, include all of the activities in the Gaap work plan that you want, and justify them as best you can. And we as project officers will do, our best to fund those activities.
Yeah, and Tim adds, funds are limited, but generally larger work plans are funded at higher amounts. So think about requesting funds for special projects as well, which is awarded on top of what your base work plan is valued at. Anika, here's a question for you. Does BLM have funds for solid waste? Do you know?
I'm not sure. That's
from Nina, so maybe follow up with her on that.
I can follow up with you on that. I think they do. And so it's just trying to figure out what funds IHS has, what funds BLM has, what funds Gaap and EPA have, and which is best suited to fund different activities. But again, Gaap has tremendous flexibility to fund solid waste activities, be them, implementation or capacity building, but not as much fun as say IHS for large scale, dumps and landfills. So again, great conversation to have with your project officer. So we'll follow up.
Yeah, and she added, I thought they used to, but it isn't something I've dealt with since leaving the Intermountain area. Oh, Anita added, she was thinking of Robertson. He's in Arizona as a resource. Thank you.
Any final questions? You guys just want to stare at a kitty?
We just show off our pets, Nico?
I think she's hungry.
That is the cutest cat. Yeah. Hopefully my dog wasn't too distracting the whole hour. He's definitely been snoring up a storm.
Yo.
Yeah, how old is that kitten? It looks like
she's I think like 5 or 6 weeks, really young. A student of my wife's found a cat had a litter in like the side of their yard, so they were, and then left. I don't know. So she told everybody and asked people if they could adopt a kitten. So we have a new addition to the family. Although I feel like a single father at present.
So Robertson asked, why did the chicken cross the road?
Running from a kitty.
Anita responded, good to
The other side.
So, classic. Thanks. Well, thanks for your
We're dealing with these
technical issues, and yeah, we do appreciate all the questions and feedback, and hopefully we'll have another Gaap work group session soon so we can actually hear your voices and see your faces.
Yep, I echo that. And again, just like in closing, and to like summarize, like be in constant communication with your Gaap project officer. We've created these forums for people, to have collaborative conversations and to kind of, go off one another, but it's very difficult given the technology. So reach out to your Gaap project officer, ask them all of the difficult questions, ask them for specific technical assistance that you're looking for, questions about Gaap eligibility. Most of the problems that we encounter are just from lack of communication. So feel free to reach out. Squeaky wheel gets the grease. Thank you everyone again for all of your patience.
Close out with a joke. Nina put a joke in. 2 pickles fell out of a jar and one told the other to deal with it. Ha! I like it. All right, everyone, enjoy the rest of your conference. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.